Okay, so today we're going to finish up the notes on Chapter 5, Section 3. So what we've already talked about is our review of our geometry. We filled in these 6 trig functions, sine, cosine, tangent, and then the reciprocals, cosecant, secant, and tangent. We did 2 examples. Remember, I had changed the numbers on this one to make it the 3, 4, 5 triangle. And then we filled in the 6 trig functions. And then the next example, or this, was where we talked about the special right triangles. And again, remember the sides on, if we're only dealing with a radius of 1, then we can just use these numbers. However, in the example I just worked out from number 35 from the homework, we had to use the fact that the legs of the 45 are A and A, and the hypotenuse is whatever A is with square root 2. And then in the 30, 60, 90, the side across from 30 is A, across from the 60 is whatever A is with root 3 behind it, and then the hypotenuse was 2 times A. This is when your numbers are not the 1, 2, or the square root 2 or the square root 3. Then we use those 3 numbers, or those 2 triangles, to answer the sine, all the 6 trig functions for 30, and all the 6 trig functions for the 60, and then also for the 45. Again, I highly recommend that you memorize that the tangent of 45 equals 1, and the cotangent also equals 1. This will help us moving forward into the unit circle, which when we cover the chapter, the radians in our regular textbook, it'll help us out. Today what we're going to talk about are reference angles. So what we're going to do is the reference angle is going to be the acute angle that is going to be the distance between the angle that's given and the x-axis. Remember, it's always going to be the distance that it's going to take to get back to the x-axis, never to the y-axis. Now, these are going to be the equations that are written here in blue, green, orange, and pink to find the measurement of the reference angle. So, for example, if I were to draw in quadrant 1 and draw a 30-degree angle, let's say this is about 30 degrees. When your angle is something that is in quadrant 1, the reference angle is just that angle. So the reference angle equals the angle measure. Now, if I were to draw an angle that ended up in quadrant number 2, let's say I drew a 135-degree angle. So I would start here at 0, come around, and this could be my 135-degree angle. To find its reference angle, I'm trying to figure out how much it would take to get back to the x-axis. I always want to find the shortest way. So the shortest way would be continuing that angle, and then that would be a 45-degree reference angle. So what we would do, if we want to find the reference angle for an angle that ends up in quadrant 2, we take 180, we subtract the angle we just drew, and the reference angle is 45. If our angle that we're going to draw is going to end up in quadrant 3, let's say we're going to draw a 210-degree angle. So it's going to come around. Let's say it ends up about here. To find its reference angle, remember, it's always what it would take to get back to the x-axis. So in this case, this 210-degree angle, it's faster to go back this way, and you would find that by doing the angle you just drew, and you subtract 180. And this reference angle would be 30 degrees. So again, it's always not what it continues to make to get to the next axis, it's the distance that it takes to get back to the x-axis. Then if I were to draw one in quadrant 4, let's say I want to draw a 330-degree angle. I start here, swirl around. Let's say 330 is about here. And again, to find its reference angle, you take 360 and subtract out the angle you just drew. And its reference angle is 30 degrees. So it would be right here, and it would take 30 degrees to finish it up. And then the purple one was 30. All of our reference angles, again, are going to go back to the x-axis. So if this is my axis, it's going to sort of look like a bow tie. So if I were to just draw this, my reference angles would all be located right in here. Sort of think of it being like a bow tie. So it's whatever's taking to get back to the x-axis to complete the angle. So it says to find the given values. Now, technically you could take out your handy-dandy calculator, hit the sign button and put 210 and get the answer. But we're going to be doing these without a calculator. So what we're going to do is let's draw the angle to see which quadrant it ends up in. Now, before I start that, let's review the signs that are in each quadrant, so it'll help us. So in quadrant 1, remember the signs on your order pairs are positive, positive. Quadrant 2, negative, positive. Quadrant 3, negative, negative. Quadrant 4, positive, negative. And then also we'll be using our all students take calculus acronym. So let's go ahead and draw the 210-degree angle. So if I come around here and start at 0, remember this is 0, 90, 180, 270. So if I come around here, start at 0, go to 90, 180, to get to 210, I need to go 30 degrees more. So remember, your reference angle, when it's in quadrant 3, you're taking the angle measure and subtracting 180. So my reference angle is 30 degrees. So I'm going to now turn this into a triangle. And I'm going to use my special right triangles. So because my reference angle here is 30 degrees, the right angle is always going to be formed here with the x-axis. And then this would be my 60-degree angle. And you're going to memorize the sides. So remember, across from 30 is 1. Across from the 60 is the square root of 3. And here, my R value is going to be 2. You're memorizing this from the night before's homework. So in the 30, 60, 90, across from 30 is 1. Across from 60 is the square root of 3. And then across from the 90, the hypotenuse is going to be 2. Now remember, the signs in quadrant 3, my x and y value are both negatives. So the root 3 is negative, and so is the 1. So now I need to do sine. And you're going to either memorize it as opposite over hypotenuse, or you could memorize it as the y over r. So if you want to label these now in relation to the reference angle, which is, let's see what color is going to show up best here. Let's try green. So in relation to the 30, the -1 is the opposite. And remember, if you're going to memorize it with the x, y, and r, opposite is the y. And notice the vertical line is the y. And then this is the adjacent to 30, which is your x. It's along the x-axis. The 2 is the hypotenuse. And it's also your r value. So now, when I go to find the sine of 210, I'm using its reference angle of 30. So I'm going to fill it in as either y over r or opposite over hypotenuse, whichever way you want to memorize it. And the opposite side is -1, and the hypotenuse or the r value is 2. So the answer to the sine of 210 is -1/2. If you wanted to leave the -1 at the top or just put it in front of the fraction, either answer is acceptable here. Now, when we're doing these, we need to find a coterminal angle that's on the quadrants, or on the coordinate plane. So we're always looking for a reference angle that's between 0 and 360, or a coterminal angle. So let's try the next one. It's a 300-degree angle. So let's go ahead and give ourselves a visual to see where 300 degrees ends up. So if I draw my little axis here, and again, 0, 90, 180, 270. So if I swirl around here to get to 300, I'm going 90, 180, 270, and then I need to go 30 degrees more. So this is my 300-degree angle. Remember, the reference angle is what it takes to get to the x-axis. So to finish this up, remember what we could do here is 360 minus the 300. You don't have to necessarily graph these. You can just memorize the rules to find the reference angle. In quadrant 4, it's always 360 minus the angle that's in quadrant 4. So my reference angle here is 60. So now I'm going to label my sides in relation to the 60. So again, remember, opposite of the 60-degree angle is the root 3. Opposite to the 30 is the 1. And then your hypotenuse here is the 2. And again, label the sides. So again, the 1 is going to be the adjacent side. And maybe I'll just do it in red. It's showing up better. This is adjacent. It's also your x. This is the opposite. Also, you can memorize it as y. This is the hypotenuse, and you can memorize it as r. So again, the signs in quadrant 4 are positive, negative. So the 3 is a negative, the root 3 is negative. The 1 is positive. We're memorizing tangent to either be, we could use our TOA, which is opposite over adjacent, or memorize it as y over x. Either way. So once I put in my values here, opposite is the negative square root 3, adjacent is 1. This simplifies to negative square root 3. Another thing you can do is if you don't want to put the signs on the x and the y, you can also memorize your All Students Take Calculus. Remember, the answer in quadrant 4, it's the C, calculus. Cosine and secant are the only ones that are positive. So there should be also a clue that tangent needs to be negative in quadrant 4. So you can do it that way as well. That little acronym will help you to confirm if you've got the right sign. Let's try the next one. I need to find a coterminal angle to 675. I need to make sure that my angle here is going to end up being between 0 and 360. So what I'm going to do to find the coterminal angle, remember, we just need to take that, subtract it from 360, and my coterminal angle, the 675, is 315. So let's go ahead and draw this. So what we could do is draw the original one, and I could also just show you that its coterminal angle is the 315. To do 675, you're going to go around a full circle and then 315 degrees more. So this would be the 675. So in order to go past the 270, so that's 180, 270, I went 45 degrees more to finish up that angle. So my reference angle here is 45. So now I've got the 45, 45, 90 triangle. My legs are both 1 and 1, and the hypotenuse is the square root of 2. Again, the signs in quadrant 4 are going to be positive, negative. So my x is positive, my y is negative, and I want tangent. And again, I could also add in instead of x and y. So this is x, this is adjacent, this is opposite, and it's the y. This is hypotenuse, and it's the r. Tangent, you're going to memorize it as y over x or opposite over adjacent. Either way, once you fill it in, opposite was -1, adjacent was 1. This simplifies to -1. So the tangent of 675 is -1. Again, if you wanted to do your all students take calculus, remember in quadrant 4, the only thing that's positive are cosine and secant. And so that meant tangent in quadrant 4 had to be negative, and that's what I got. Let's try number 9. Let's draw this. It's a negative angle. This time I'm going to go clockwise. So again, I got 0. I've got 0, 90, 180, 270. So what I'm going to do here is come around. 90, 180. Now to get to -240, I need to go 60 degrees more. This is my reference angle because this is what it's going to take to get back to the x-axis. So again, let's label the sides in the 30, 60, 90. So here, across from 60 is the square root of 3. Across from the 30 is going to be the 1, and the hypotenuse is the 2. So again, you can label them. This is opposite to the 60, which is also your y. This is the hypotenuse, which is r. The 1 is the adjacent, and it's also the x. So the horizontal is the x, the vertical is the y, just like your x and your y axis. Remember the signs in quadrant 2 are negative, negative. Positive, negative. Negative, positive. So the signs are negative, positive. So the x is going to be negative, so this will be a -1 here. And then the root 3 is positive. So cosine is going to use x over r or adjacent over hypotenuse. And now let's fill in the numbers. So my adjacent was -1, my hypotenuse is 2. Again, you can put the negative sign in front or leave it in the top. Again, if you check it with your all students take calculus, the only thing positive in quadrant 2 are sine and cosecant. We were doing cosine, so getting a negative answer makes sense. This time they want us to do secant, but I'm still doing the same thing. So if I draw a 210-degree angle again, we're going to come around. This time it's going to end up in quadrant 3. Signs in quadrant 3 are negative, negative. To get back to the x-axis, remember you went 90, 180, and then to get to the 210, you went 30 degrees more. So again, 30, 60, 90 here. So again, across from the 30 degrees is 1. This is root 3. This is 2. Again, signs are negative, negative. So your x and your y are both negative. This is adjacent, which is also x. This is opposite, which is y. This is hypotenuse, which is r. So for secant, this is the reciprocal to cosine. So reciprocal to cosine, you're either memorizing it as r over x or hypotenuse over adjacent. So let's fill it in. So my r value is 2. My adjacent is negative square root 3. I need to rationalize. So multiply top and bottom by radical 3. 2 radical 3 over 3, and just put the negative sign out front. And again, all students take calculus. The only thing in quadrant 3 that should be positive are tangent and cotangent. The other 4 are negative. So getting a negative answer here makes sense. Let's try number 11. So again, draw your 135-degree angle. In order to make this, you went 90 and then 45 degrees more. Again, what we're doing is making it go back to the x-axis. So to finish this, it's 45 is your reference angle. You're memorizing the legs are 1 and 1. Hypotenuse is root 2. The signs in quadrant 2 again are going to be negative, positive. So this is negative, and the other leg, the other one, is positive. This is adjacent to the 45, which is your x, opposite, which is your y, hypotenuse, which is your r. Cotangent, reciprocal of tangent. So if you remember that tangent is TOA, flip it. So this is going to be adjacent over opposite, or memorize it as x over y. So again, we'll fill it in. Negative 1 over 1 simplifies to negative 1. Again, you can use the rules to find the reference angle without graphing it, but it sort of helps gives me a visual so I can see the sides of the triangle. Let's look at the next one, cosecant, 210 again. So again, come around here, 90, 180, 30 degrees more to get to the 210. Again, your reference angle is made back to the x-axis. So I went 30 degrees further to go back here. Here's my right angle. Here's my 60. You're memorizing across from 30 is 1. Across from 60 is square root 3. And the hypotenuse is 2. Remember, the signs in quadrant 3 are negative, negative. So this will be a negative 1 and a negative root 3. Again, opposite to the 30 is the negative 1. This is also your y. This is hypotenuse, which is your r. Adjacent, which is your x. Fill it in. Cosecant is the reciprocal to sine. So sine, you're memorizing as opposite over hypotenuse. So the reciprocal is hypotenuse over opposite. And r over y. So I'm just going to fill in those two numbers. The r is 2. The y is negative 1. So the cosecant of 210 is negative 2. For the 510, again, we need to have the reference angle. So we need to get a reference angle that's on between 0 and 360. So what we can do here is do negative 510 plus 360. And I get negative 150. And then if I do it one more time, I'm going to be graphing at 210. Now technically, the sign of negative 510 is also the same as the sign of the negative 150. It's the same answer. But let's go ahead and draw this in. So what we can do is we're going to swirl around here. So it's negative, so we're going clockwise. So 360. And then what I can do is go another 150. So another 90, and then I'll go 60 degrees, and I end up right here. So my reference angle is 30 degrees. Right angle, 60. So again, opposite the 30 is 1. Opposite the 60, root 3. Opposite the 90 is 2. Remember, in quadrant 3, your signs are negative, negative. So this is a -1, negative root 3. Again, opposite to 30 is the -1. This is also your y. Adjacent, x, hypotenuse, r. We want sine. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, or why should you sin? Y over r. So then we'll fill it in, -1/2. You could also have put the negative in the front. So the sine of -150 is also -1/2 because it's a coterminal angle. So again, we need to get something between 0 and 360. So we're going to take the -1020. We're going to add 360. And then we get -660. Add 360 again. -300. Do it one more time. And we get 60. This is going to be our reference angle. But let's go ahead and graph this. So it's negative, so I'm going clockwise. So I'm going to go around one time, 360, then go around again. I'm at 720, and then I got to go 300 more degrees. So 90, 180, 270, and finally 300. So that would be the -1020. So notice, to get now back to the x-axis, this is going to be a 60-degree reference angle. So put the 30 here, the right angle. Remember, across from 60 is root 3. Hypotenuse is 2. Across from 30 is 1. Signs in quadrant 1 are positive, positive. So I'm just going to leave them. Tangent. Let me just rewrite it down here. So tangent, remember, TOA, opposite over adjacent, or y over x. And in this case, let me label these. This is adjacent, which is your x, opposite, y, hypotenuse, r. So opposite over hypotenuse, opposite root 3. Opposite over adjacent, root 3 over 1 simplifies to just square root 3. Remember, in quadrant 1, everything is positive, so we should be getting a positive answer here. So again, just another little way to double check your signs. Okay, so now they want us to find theta, the angle measure. And again, notice this restriction here. They only want us to give answers that are between 0 and 360 degrees. Notice the bracket around 0, which means it can include 0, but the 360 has parentheses. So your answer, the biggest answer you can get, should be less than 360. It should be like 359. You can't put 360 as an answer. Anything bigger than 360 is not a good answer. All right, so let's go ahead, and what we're going to be using are our two special right triangles. So what we're going to be doing is trying to figure out the reference angle. So we're going to be using the 30, 60, 90 and the 45, 45, 90. So a clue here, remember in the 45, 45, soon as you see square root 2, that's a clue that automatically your reference angle is 45. If you see square root 3, then it's either going to be the 30 or the 60. We don't know which, and that's where we're going to have to figure out which one it's going to be. So what you can do is you can figure out what all of these are ahead of time, but I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. So here we can see they want us to find the angle measure theta when it equals negative square root 2 over 2. Again, soon as I see a square root 2 here, I know my reference angle is going to be 45. So remember, cosine is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. So just to show you what they're doing here is if I take my sides, and it doesn't matter which one. Let's say I label them in relation to this 45. This could have been opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. So cosine theta is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. You got to rationalize. You get root 2 over 2. But we've already seen that when we see root 2, it's 45. But then what we need to do is figure out which quadrant cosine is going to be negative in. So all students take calculus. I know that cosine is going to be positive here and here. So it's going to be negative in these two. So now what I need to do is figure out what the angles are in here that have a reference angle of 45. So what we're going to do is we know to find the reference angle in quadrant 2. We take 180, subtract the reference angle. And the angle measure in quadrant 2, where cosine's negative, is 135. In quadrant 3, we're going to take 180 and we add the reference angle. And the angle there will be 225. So these questions are going to have sometimes 2 answers, sometimes 4 answers. So in this case, where cosine of theta is equal to negative root 2 over 2, it's going to occur when you're having an angle that's 135 and 225. If it were positive, let's say instead the question said, find theta, find the angle measure, when it's positive root 2 over 2, and we already saw that cosine's positive here and here. Remember, in quadrant 1, the reference angle is just whatever the angle was. In quadrant 4, what we're going to do is 360 minus the reference angle, and then that's going to give us an angle measure of 315. So when cosine of theta equals positive root 2 over 2, it'll be 45 degrees and 315. Now, what you can do for these is ahead of time, figure out, based on the reference angle, what the answers could be. So let me add in a slide here before I continue on with examples. So I just did all of the reference angles for 45. So let me set this up. So when your reference angle is 45 degrees, remember in quadrant 1, the reference angle is just the angle equals the angle measure. In quadrant 2, it's going to be 180 minus the reference angle. So 180 minus 45, and the angle with the reference angle of 45 will be 135. In quadrant 3, we're going to take 180 and we add the reference angle. So 180 plus 45, and in quadrant 3, it'll be a 225 degree angle. And then in quadrant 4, it'll be 360 minus the reference angle. So here it'll be 360 minus 45, and it'll be 315. So as soon as you can identify what your reference angle is, if you've already memorized that in quadrant 3 it's 225, quadrant 4 315, quadrant 1 45, Quadrant 2, 135. You don't have to go back and do these calculations. Now for the 30, 60, 90, this is the one that's more challenging because we won't know which one it is until we set it up. So for a reference angle of 30 degrees, I'm going to do exactly the same calculations. Quadrant 1, it's just the reference angle, 30. Quadrant 2, remember it's 180 minus the reference, so it would be a 150 degree angle. Quadrant 3, 180 plus the reference angle, so it'll be a 210 degree angle. Quadrant 4, 360 minus the reference angle, so it'll be a 330 degree angle. When your reference angle is 60 degrees, in quadrant 1, it's just that angle, 60. Quadrant 2, remember, you're going to take 180 and minus 60, so it's 120. Quadrant 3, 180 plus that reference angle, 240. Quadrant 4, 360 minus the reference angle, so 300. So if you memorize these ahead of time, you don't have to do these calculations. But if you forget, it's simple enough. Quadrant 1, it's the same. Quadrant 2, 180 minus that angle. Quadrant 3, 180 plus it. And then quadrant 4, 360 minus the reference angle. So let's try some of these. So now that we've established that, notice I got root 3 here. So I don't know if it's the 30 or the 60 that'll give me this answer. So what I'm going to do is draw my 30, 60, 90. So 60, 30, remember this is root 3, 1, and 2. So what I'm going to do here is cosine of 30, cosine of 60 to figure out which one gives me this answer. So in relation to the 30, I know cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So my adjacent to 30 is root 3. And my hypotenuse is 2. Well, right away I can see it's that one. If I did cosine adjacent over hypotenuse in relation to the 60, it's 1 over 2. So my reference angle is 30. Now, what I need to figure out is where is cosine negative? So all students take calculus. Cosine will be negative right here and right here. So if you've memorized from the previous slide, the two angles, when your reference angle is 30, or do the calculations. So to get this answer, it's 180 minus 30, so it'll be 150, and then 180 plus 30, 210. So the two answers here are 150 degrees and 210 degrees. Let's try the next one. Again, I see root 3. Clue, 30, 60, 90 again. So again, draw your triangle. Opposite 30 is 1, opposite 60, root 3, and 2. So what I'm going to do is do tangent of 30, tangent of 60, and figure out which one gives me square root 3. Some students memorize these. It's totally up to you. Tangent, remember, is opposite over adjacent. So in reference to the 30, opposite is 1, adjacent is root 3. I need to rationalize. So tangent of 30 is root 3 over 3. This one didn't work. So now let's try the 60. Opposite to 60 is root 3. Adjacent is 1. So I can see my reference angle is the 60. So again, all students take calculus. Tangent is negative here and here. So again, you're going to take 180, subtract 60, 360, subtract 60. So the two angles here, once you subtract this, you get 120. Over here, 300. So the two angles where tangent is equal to negative square root 3 are going to be 120 degrees and 300 degrees. Two more, still doing the exact same thing. Cosecant this time. Remember cosecant, this is hypotenuse over opposite. Again, I got a root 3, 30, 60, 90 again. This is root 3, 1, 2. Again, I'm going to do cosecant of the 30, and then cosecant of the 60 to see which one gives me that answer. Notice it's plus minus. So this is going to tell me it's going to be the answers to all four. So if I do cosecant of 30, I need opposite and hypotenuse. So opposite to 30 is 1, and hypotenuse is 2. So 2 over 1. Obviously, it's not that one, so it's going to be the 60. But if I put it in here, opposite to the 60 is the square root of 3, and then the hypotenuse is in the top. Rationalize. 2 root 3 over 3. Well, that was the answer I was looking for. So now I'm going to do all four of them. So 60 degrees here, 180 minus 60, 180 plus 60, 360 minus 60, 300, 240, 120. So the four answers, because it's plus minus, it's positive so cosecant is positive here and here, and then it would be negative here and here. But because it's plus minus, it's all four answers. So 60, 120, 240, 300. We're going to do exactly the same thing. It's a root 3, so that's a clue. It's 30, 60, 90. Okay, so for the last example, we need to figure out what is our reference angle. Is it the 30 or the 60? I see root 3. That was the clue that it's a 30, 60, 90. So let's go ahead and draw the 30, 60, 90. So 60, and it doesn't matter where you put it. What's important is that the side across from the 60 is the square root of 3. Across from the 30 is 1, and there's your 2. So again, I'm going to do both tangent of 30 and tangent of 60 to figure out which one will give me the answer of the square root of 3 over 3. So remember tangent, if you remember your TOA, it's going to be opposite over adjacent. So opposite to 30 is 1, adjacent is root 3. I need to rationalize. So this gives me root 3 over 3. Well, that's my answer right away. Tangent of 60 would have been opposite over adjacent, which is root 3. So this one is not the answer because it didn't give us what we started with. So now again, I'm going to do my all students take calculus here to figure out where tangent is positive. And I know tangent is positive here and here. So I'm looking for the two angle measures with the reference angle of the 30 in both of those quadrants. So again, quadrant 1 is just the reference angle, and then quadrant 2 is 180 plus that reference angle, so that will be 210. So the two angles, the theta, for when it equals the square root of 3 over 3, they are going to be 30 degrees and 210 degrees. And that is it for the notes on 5.3.